네, 안녕하세요. 네, 섀도잉 13일차 녹화 시작하겠습니다.
When I was first learning to meditate, the
When I was first learning to meditate,
instruction was to simply pay attention to my breath,
the instruction was to simply pay attention to my breath,
and when my mind wandered, to bring it back.
and when my mind wanted to bring it back.
Sounded simple enough,
Sounded simple enough,
yet I'd sit on these silent retreats,
yet I sit on these silent retreats,
sweating through t-shirts in the middle of winter.
sweating through t-shirts in the middle of winter.
I take naps every chance I got because it was really hard work.
I take naps every chance I got because it was really hard work.
Actually, it was exhausting.
Actually, it was exhausting.
The instruction was simple enough,
The instruction was simple enough,
but I was missing something really important.
but I was missing something really important.
So why is it so hard to pay attention?
So why is it so hard to pay attention?
Well, studies show
Well, studies show
that even when we're really trying to pay attention to something,
even when we are really trying to pay attention to something, even when we are really trying to pay attention to something,
like maybe this talk,
like maybe this talk,
at some point about half of us will drift off into a daydream,
at some point about half of us will drift off into a daydream,
or have this urge to check our Twitter feed.
or have this urge to check our Twitter feed, or have this urge to check our Twitter feed.
So what's going on here?
So what's going on here?
It turns out that we're fighting one of the most evolutionarily conserved learning processes currently known in science.
It turns out that we're fighting one of the most evolutionarily conserved learning processes currently known in science.
One that's conserved back to the most basic nervous systems known to man.
One that's conserved back to the most basic nervous systems known to man.
This reward-based learning process is called positive and negative reinforcement, and basically goes like this.
The reward-based learning process is called positive and negative reinforcement, and basically goes like this.
We see some food that looks good.
We see something that looks good.
Our brain says calories, survival.
Our brain says calories, survival.
We eat the food, we taste it, it tastes
We eat the food, we taste it,
good.
it tastes good.
And especially with sugar,
And especially with sugar,
our body sends a signal to our brain that says,
the body sends a signal to our brain that says,
remember what you're eating and where you found it.
remember what you're eating, where you found it.
We lay down this context-dependent memory
We lay down this context-dependent memory
and learn to repeat the process next time.
and learn to repeat the process next time.
See food, eat food, feel good, repeat.
See food, eat food, feel good, repeat.
Trigger, behavior, reward.
Trigger, behavior, reward.
Simple, right?
Simple, right?
Well, after a while, our creative brains say,
Well, after a while, our creative brain says,
you know what? You can use this for more than just remembering where food is.
you know what? You can use this for more than just remembering where food is. You can use this for more than just remembering where food is.
You know, next time you feel bad,
Next time you feel bad,
why don't you try eating something good
why don't you try eating something good
so you'll feel better?
so you feel better?
We thank our brains for the great idea,
We thank our brain for the great idea. We thank our brains for the great idea.
try this, and quickly learn that if we eat chocolate or ice cream when we're mad or sad, we feel better.
Try it and quickly learn that if we eat chocolate or ice cream when we are mad or sad, we feel better.
Same process, just a different trigger.
Same process, just a different trigger.
Instead of this hunger signal coming from our stomach,
Instead of hunger signal coming from our stomach,
this emotional signal, feeling sad, triggers that urge to eat.
this emotional signal, feeling sad, triggers the urge to eat.
Maybe in our teenage years,
Maybe in our teenage years,
we were a nerd at school,
we were a nerd at school,
and we see those rebel kids outside smoking. We think, hey, I want to be cool, so we start smoking.
so we see those rebel kids outside smoking and we think, hey, I want to be cool, so we start smoking.
The Marlboro Man wasn't a dork, and that was no accident.
And Marlboro Man wasn't a dog, and that was no accident.
See cool, smoke to be cool, feel good. Repeat.
See cool, smoke to be cool, feel good, repeat.
Trigger, behavior, reward.
Trigger, behavior, reward.
And each time we do this,
And each time we do this,
we learn to repeat the process.
and each time we do this, we learn to repeat the process,
And it becomes a habit.
and it becomes a habit.
So later, feeling stressed out triggers that urge to smoke a cigarette or to eat something sweet.
So later, feeling stressed out triggers the urge to smoke a cigarette or eat something sweet.
Now with these same brain processes, we've gone from learning to survive
Now with these same brain processes, we've gone from learning to survive
to literally killing ourselves with these habits.
to really killing ourselves with these habits.
Obesity and smoking are among the leading preventable causes of morbidity and mortality in the world.
Obesity and smoking are among the leading preventable causes of morbidity and mortality in the world.
So back to my breath.
So back to my breath.
What if instead of fighting our brains or trying to force ourselves to pay attention,
What if instead of fighting our brains up, trying to force ourselves to pay attention,
we instead tapped into this natural reward-based learning process?
we instead tapped into this natural reward-based learning processes. We instead tapped into this natural reward-based learning processes.
What if instead of fighting our brains or trying to force ourselves to pay attention, we instead tapped into this natural reward-based learning process?
We instead tapped into this natural reward learning process,
But added a
but
twist.
added a twist.
What if instead we just got really curious about what
What if instead we just got really curious about
was happening in our momentary experience?
what is happening in the momentary experience?
I'll give you an example.
I'll give you an example.
In my lab, we studied whether mindfulness training could help people quit smoking.
In my lab, we studied whether mindfulness training could help people quit smoking.
Now, just like trying to force myself to pay attention to my breath,
Just like trying to force myself to pay attention to my breath, just like trying to force myself to pay attention to my breath,
they could try to force themselves to quit smoking.
they could try to force themselves to quit smoking.
Now, just like trying to force myself to pay attention to my breath, they could try to force themselves to quit smoking.
They could try to force themselves to quit smoking. They could try to force themselves to quit smoking.
And the majority of them had tried this before and failed,
And majority of them had tried this before and failed,
on average 6 times.
on average 6 times.
Now, with mindfulness training, we dropped a bit about forcing
In mindfulness training, we dropped a bit about forcing
and instead focused on being curious.
and instead focused on being curious.
In fact, we even told them to smoke.
In fact, we even told them to smoke.
What? Yeah, we said, go ahead and smoke.
What? We said, go ahead and smoke.
Just be really curious about what it's like when you do.
Just to be really curious about what it's like when you do.
And what did they notice?
And what did they notice?
Oh, here's an example from one of our smokers.
Here's an example of one of our smokers.
She said, mindful smoking smells like stinky cheese and tastes like chemicals. Yuck.
She said mindful smoking smells like stinky cheese and tastes like chemicals. Yuck.
Now, she knew cognitively that smoking was bad for her.
Now she knew cognitively that smoking was bad for her.
That's why she joined our program.
That's why she joined our program.
What she discovered just by being curiously aware when she smoked
Just what she discovered just by being curiously aware when she smoked.
what she discovered just by being curiously aware when she smoked
What she discovered just by being curiously aware when she smoked
was that smoking tastes like shit.
was that smoking tastes like shit.
Now, she moved from knowledge to wisdom.
Now she moved from knowledge to wisdom.
She moved from knowing in her head that smoking was bad for her
She moved from knowing in her head that smoking was bad for her
to knowing it in her bones.
to knowing it in her bones. To knowing it in her bones.
And the spell of smoking was broken.
And the spell of smoking was broken. And the spell of smoking was broken.
She started to become disenchanted with her behavior.
She started to become disenchanted with her behavior.
Now, the prefrontal cortex, that youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective,
Now, the prefrontal cortex, the youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective. Now, the prefrontal cortex, the youngest part of our brain, part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective.
frontal cortex, that youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective,
Youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective. The prefrontal cortex, the youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective.
it understands on an intellectual level
It understands on an intellectual level
that we shouldn't smoke.
that we shouldn't smoke.
And it tries its hardest to help us change our behavior.
And it tries its hardest change our behavior. And it tries its hardest to help us change our behavior.
An intellectual level that we shouldn't smoke. And it tries its hardest to help us change our behavior, to help us stop smoking.
And it tries its hardest to help us change our behavior, to help us stop smoking,
To help us stop eating that second, that
to help us stop eating the second, the third,
that
the fourth
fourth
cookie.
cookie. We call this cognitive control. We're using cognition to control our behavior.
We call this cognitive control. We're using cognition to control our behavior.
Unfortunately, this is also the first part of our brain that goes offline when we get stressed out.
Unfortunately, this is also the first part of our brain that goes offline when it gets stressed out,
Which isn't that helpful.
which isn't that helpful.
And we can all relate to this in our own experience.
We can all relate to this in our own experience.
We're much more likely to do things like yell at our spouse or kids
We're much more likely to do things like yell at our spouse or kids
when we're stressed out or tired, even though we know it's not going to be helpful.
when it gets stressed out or tired, even though it's not gonna be helpful.
We just can't help ourselves.
We just can't help ourselves.
Now, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline,
Now, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline,
we fall back into our old habits,
we fall back into our older habits,
which is why this disenchantment is so important.
which is why this disenchantment is so important.
Seeing what we get from our habits helps
Seeing what we get from our habits help us.
us understand them in a deeper level.
Seeing what we get from our habits help us understand them at a deeper level,
To know it in our bones. So
to
we
know in our bone.
don't have to force ourselves to hold back or restrain ourselves from
We don't have to force ourselves or restrain ourselves from behavior.
behavior. We're just less interested in doing it in the
We're
first
just less interested in doing it in the first place.
place. And this is what mindfulness is all about.
And this is what mindfulness is all about.
Seeing really clearly what we get when we get caught up in our behaviors.
Seeing really clearly what we get when we get caught up in our behavior.
becoming disenchanted on a visceral level.
Becoming disenchanted on a visceral level,
And from this disenchanted stance, naturally letting go.
and from this disenchanted stance, naturally letting go.
This isn't to say that
This isn't to say that
poof, magically we quit
we
smoking,
quit smoking.
but over time, as we learn to see more and more clearly the results of our actions,
But over time, as we learn to see more and more clearly the results of our actions,
we let go of old habits
we let go of all the habits
and form new ones.
and form new ones.
The paradox here is
The paradox here is
that mindfulness is just about being really interested in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment.
and the paradox here is that mindfulness is just about being interested in getting close and personal with what's happening in our momentary experience,
With what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment
in our bodies and minds
to
from
moment.
in our bodies and minds from moment to moment,
Happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment.
in our bodies and minds from moment to moment.
About being really interested in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our
It was actually happening. It was actually happening.
in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment. Is that mindfulness is just about being really
It's mindfulness
interested in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment. This will inform new ones. The paradox here is that mindfulness is just about being really interested in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment.
The paradox here is that mindfulness training is just about being interested in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment.
This willingness to turn toward our experience rather than trying to make unpleasant cravings go away as quickly as possible.
This willingness to turn toward our experience rather than
What's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment. This willingness to turn toward our
this willingness to turn toward our experience
rather than trying to make unpleasant
rather than trying to make unpleasant
cravings go away as
quickly as possible.
And this willingness to turn toward our experience
And the willingness to turn toward our experience
is supported by curiosity,
is supported
which is
by curiosity. This is
naturally rewarding.
this is
Supported by curiosity, which is naturally rewarding.
this is naturally rewarding. Which is naturally rewarding.
What does curiosity feel like?
What is curiosity feel like?
It feels good.
It feels good.
And what happens when we get curious?
And what happens when you get curious?
We start to notice the cravings are simply made up of body sensations.
We start to notice that we start to notice that cravings were simply made up of body sensations.
Notice the cravings are simply made up of body sensations. Oh, there's tightness. Cravings are simply made up of body sensations. Oh, there's tightness. We start to notice the cravings are simply made up of body sensations. Oh, there's tightness. Cravings are simply made up of body sensations.
Cravings are simply made up of body sensation. Cravings are simply made up of body sensations. We start to notice that cravings are made up of cravings are simply made up of body sensations.
And what happens when we get curious? We start to notice the cravings are simply made up of body sensations.
We start to notice that cravings are simply made up of body sensations.
Oh, there's tightness.
Oh, there's tightness.
There's tension.
There's tension.
There's restlessness.
There's restlessness.
And that these body sensations come and go.
And these body sensations come and go.
These are bite-sized pieces of experience.
These are bite-sized pieces of experience
that we can manage from moment to moment,
that we can manage from moment to moment,
rather than getting clobbered by this huge, scary craving that we
rather than by being rather rather than by getting clobbered by a huge, scary craving
choke on.
that we choke on.
In other words,
In other
when we
words,
get curious,
when you get curious,
we step out of our old fear-based reactive habit pattern
we step out of old fear-based habit patterns,
and we step into being.
and we step into being.
We become this inner scientist
We become this inner scientist,
where we're eagerly awaiting that next data point.
where we're eagerly awaiting the next data point.
Now, this might sound too simplistic to affect behavior,
This might sound too simplistic to affect behavior,
but in one study we found that mindfulness training was twice as good as gold standard therapy at helping people quit smoking.
in one study we found that mindfulness training was twice as good as gold standard therapy at helping people quit smoking.
So it actually works.
So it actually works.
And when we studied the brains of experienced meditators,
And we study the brains of experienced meditators. And we study the brains of experienced meditators. And we study the brains of experienced meditators.
we found that parts of a neural network
We found that parts of neural network
of self-referential processing called
of self-referential processing called
the default mode network were at
the default mode network
play.
were at play.
Now, one current hypothesis is
Now, one current hypothesis is
that a region of this network called the posterior cingulate
the reason of the brain called posterior cingulate cortex
cortex is activated not necessarily by craving itself,
is activated not necessarily by craving itself,
but when we get caught up in it,
but when you get caught up in it,
when we get sucked in and it
when you get sucked in it,
takes us for a ride,
it takes us for a ride.
Not necessarily by craving itself, but when we get caught up in it, when we get sucked in and it takes us for a ride.
Sucked in it, 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 sucked in it. It takes us for a ride.
In contrast, when we let go,
In contrast, when we let go, step out of the process, just in and it takes us for a ride. In contrast, when we let go, In contrast, when you let go,
step out of the process just by being curiously aware of what's happening,
just by being curiously aware of what's happening,
this same brain region quiets down.
the same brain region quiets down.
Now we're testing app and online
Now we're testing app and online
based mindfulness training
based mindfulness training programs
target these core mechanisms.
that target these core mechanisms.
And ironically, use the same technology that's
And ironically, use same technology
driving us to distraction
that driving us to distraction
to help us step out of our unhealthy habit
to help us step out of unhealthy
patterns of
habits
smoking, of
of smoking,
stress eating, and other
of stress reading, or other
Addictive
addictive behaviors.
Now remember that bit about context-dependent memory?
And remember that bit about context-dependent memory?
We can deliver these tools to people's fingertips
We can deliver to these tools to people's fingertips
in the contexts that matter most.
in the context that matter most.
So we can help them tap into their
So we can help them tap into their
inherent capacity to be
inherent capacity
curiously aware right when that
to
urge
be curious aware right when
to smoke or stress,
right when the urge to smoke
eat, or whatever
or smoker or eat or
arises.
whatever arises.
So if you don't smoke or stress eat,
So if you don't smoke or stress eat,
maybe the next time you feel
Maybe the next time you feel
this urge to check your email when you're bored. You feel this urge to check your email when you're bored.
you feel the urge to check your email when you're bored. You feel that
You're trying to distract yourself from work. Maybe the next time you feel this urge to check your email when you're bored, or
you feel the urge to check your email when you're bored.
you're trying to distract yourself from work, or you're trying to distract yourself from work. To check your email when you're bored, or you're trying to distract yourself from work. To distract yourself from work, or stress eat, or whatever arises. So if you don't smoke or stress eat, maybe the next time you feel this urge to check your email when you're bored, or you're trying to distract yourself from work.
You're bored or trying to force yourself from work. Trying to restrict yourself from work. Or you're trying bored or you're trying to
Check your email when you're bored, or you're trying to distract yourself from work. Or maybe
bored or you're
you feel
or
this
you,
urge to check your email when you're bored, or you're trying to distract yourself from work.
bored you're trying to distract bored you're trying to distract yourself from work.
Or maybe to compulsively respond to that text message when you're driving.
Maybe to compulsively respond to the text message when you're driving.
See if you can tap into
See if you can tap into this
natural capacity.
natural capacity.
Just be curiously aware of what's
Just be curious aware
happening in your body and mind in that moment.
what's happening in your body and mind at the moment.
Aware of what's happening in your body and mind in that moment.
And
It will just be another chance to
it will just be another chance
perpetuate one of our endless
to perpetuate one of our endless
and exhaustive habit loops.
and exhaustive habit loops.
Or step out of it.
Or step out of it.
Instead of see text message,
Instead of it, see text message. Instead of see text message.
just compulsively text back.
Instead of
see text message, compulsively text back.
compulsively text back.
Feel a little bit better.
Feel a
Notice
little
the
bit better.
urge.
Notice the urge.
Get curious.
Get curious.
Feel the joy of letting go.
Feel the joy of letting go
And repeat.
and repeat.
Thank you.
Thank you. 네, 오늘 13회차 13회차 녹화 마치도록 하겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다.